Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. A little bit of a different location. It came through differently, but it's good to see you. Good morning. Good morning.
You too, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rosensweet. Thank you for being here. Welcome to everybody who's going to be coming up. I'm hoping your day has been going well thus far.
It's been a lot of it today thus far.
Ay, anyway, questions we do have, and hello from Oklahoma V. Okie dokie, Dr. Rosensweet. You have made mention that you were not exactly a huge fan of thyroid medications that came from a certain animal part. Um, and so we're wondering, our questioner is wondering, are you okay with people taking um, any synthetic form of thyroid hormone?
Excellent question. One of the reasons is, we got a nice echo in here.
Uh-oh.
Let's see how to get that out. Um, one of the reasons is that it's such an excellent question. Is that there are so many human beings, female and male, that get low in thyroid, and it makes perfect sense. Thyroid hormone is one of the principal animators of metabolism. Really energizes metabolism. In order to produce a decent amount of metabolism, you need adequate thyroid hormone. And what
Mm-hmm.
and what metabolism is, it's the combination of the food you eat perfectly well digested that makes it out to the cells, combining with the oxygen that you breathe, and you produce energy and heat. That's fantastic. Energy. Whoa, this is the energy we're walking and talking with. And when there's low thyroid hormone, the energy drops. Energy production isn't as good, and nothing works well.
Right.
So intestinal tracts don't work well, and people can get constipated, and immune systems don't work well. Oh, should I say immune systems don't work well?
Not a good thing.
This is a day and age where we have a very high level of concern for the immune system, as we always have throughout human history. And thyroid hormone is one of those powerful biochemicals called hormones. That means they do big stuff and they're very strong. They're the strongest biochemicals in our body. And they are recruited not only for their day-to-day functions, of which there is many, all these hormones, any hormone you can name, have day-to-day, day in and day out functions. And almost all of them are recruitable for the biology of the stress response. So you've heard me say it so many times, when the saber-toothed tiger attacks, you have to fight or flee. You need extraordinary amounts of energy and power.
To lift up a car, even.
And when, yes, as women have done,
Yes.
lifting up a car off of an entrapped person,
Mm-hmm.
where'd that energy come from? Well, the hormones are powerful enough to grant that much energy, and yet a normal part of human life, normal part of life on Earth, is the various challenges we face.
Mm-hmm.
And they can be relanguaged as the various stresses we face if our challenge meeting skills aren't up to speed, if we make unwise decisions, if we make unwise perceptions, if we haven't acquired information and tools and skills to help us with our emotions that can get triggered during a challenging life event, or our mental, what goes on in our mind. If we haven't acquired those skills, we can have what I call a dysfunctional response, and to this new word called stress. Instead of life challenges, they become stress. Well, the stress of life is natural and good, and it really helps us grow and learn. But if we have a dysfunctional response to it, then we're inappropriately calling forth the biology of fight or flight. And if we do it day after day or year after year, our
Yikes.
glands cannot keep up with production. So midlife, so many people are hypothyroid. They don't have thyroid disease. When you do traditional thyroid blood tests, you don't see things out of the reference range very commonly. But these reference ranges are based on the American laboratory going public, many of whom are hypothyroid. So we apply different reference ranges to come up with what are optimal ranges. And you don't just need testing. The symptom list for compromised thyroid is long and deep. And so in our questionnaire that we give out to patients, it's the traditional plus medical history. There are many questions on there that relate to possible diminished thyroid hormone because it's so common. And routine in our menopause method initial blood panel, among other things, there are 4 solid thyroid tests.
Mm-hmm.
People are so commonly low. Not illness, but they don't have what they need to operate their machinery at the rate that they would like to, and with the vitality and vigor and uplifting emotions and attitude that they'd like to have. Thyroid hormone isn't the only one, but it's been called upon for double duty for so long that very often by midlife, thyroid levels are lowish. Okay, that's the background to being treated with thyroid. So when I was in medical school, it was a fabulous medical school. We were in Ann Arbor, Michigan, at the University of Michigan, and it was the center of greatness of medicine in Michigan and many, many other surrounding states. This was the Mecca. People had challenges. They sent the patients to Ann Arbor, to the University of Michigan. And so often, when we medical students were taking the initial patient history, as we were assigned to do, and we were asking what kind of medications you're on, we'd hear, well, I'm on thyroid. And we would dutifully notate that. And when we would go present these cases to our attending physicians and residents and mentors, really, they'd say, oh, that's that country bumpkin thing. Those docs, they put these people on thyroid hormone and B12 shots, and they're all doing it. And I don't know why, but go take them off that stuff. They don't need it. So I tried that a few times. I'd go out to my patients and I would say, well, this stuff, this thyroid hormone, you don't need this really. And the patients have been through this ritual long enough to say to me stuff like, look, I know what you're implying about my country doc, who has done 1,000,000 times more for me than you guys ever did. So don't be telling me to stop my thyroid hormone. I love it. And I only did that a couple of times. I learned my lesson. There was obviously something these country docs knew prior to me learning what the theory was and what the background was. And so, and these patients, 9 out of 10 of them had reverence for their country doctor and thyroid and B12 injections, both of which they could tell changed their lives in a good direction. What thyroid were they on? The one that was most popular was desiccated thyroid. And desiccated thyroid came from the Armour Company back in the day. And many of you will remember that the Armour Company had something to do with pigs, bacon, and other pig products. And when they would, quote, harvest, end quote, the pig, they would also extract their thyroid gland, dry it out, and grind it up and put it in tablets. And it was known as desiccated thyroid, and it's a pharmaceutically manufactured drug in the physician's desk reference or in the USP. This is where all these things wind up when they're actual pharmaceutical medications. A lot of people on desiccated thyroid. A lot of people really grateful for it. And then along comes one of the most popular drugs of all time called Synthroid, and otherwise known as Levothyroxine or Levoxyl. And this is pharmaceutically manufactured pure thyroid hormone, bioidentical, by the way. Levothyroxine, pure. And it's one of the two major thyroid hormones. There's two of them. There's T4, levothyroxine, and T3, liothyronine. And when it comes down to it, the most active form is the liothyronine, and the thyroid gland actually manufactures mostly T4. That T4 is circulated around to every cell in the body, and the T4 is converted to T3
Right.
in the cells. And T3 is the mostly active form of thyroid. So Synthroid comes out with T4, pharmaceutical manufacturers, in various dosage strengths because they recognize that people were different. In fact, they have a wide variety of dosage strengths, which is really a terrific understanding of hormones. In order to treat people, you need a lot of different dosage strengths because people vary so much as to how much they need, how sensitive they are, how they respond to anything. The only thing about Synthroid and its compatriots is that the white 50 microgram Synthroid is white, like I said. It doesn't have any different dyes or colors in it. And to keep things identifiable for all these different thyroid strengths, the manufacturers put colors in all the different pills. So the 75 microgram, the 87.5 microgram, they're all different colors. Well, I can see the logic there, but in an age when, as a functional medicine doctor or a holistic doctor, I'm concerned about things that our bodies don't need. So that color is not favorable, but the T4 is bioidentical. It's the same molecule that's in the human thyroid gland, or produced by the human thyroid gland. So it's called Synthroid, but it happens to be bioidentical.
Interesting.
And a lot of, quote, modern doctors switched their patients off of desiccated thyroid or started new patients on Synthroid. For good reason, because Synthroid can work really well. It works really well in those who do that conversion from T4 to T3 well. Not everybody does.
Mm-mm.
So I'm going to circle back to that. So I went and spent some time, a week, shadowing a very famous holistic medical doctor, Alan Gaby. I get chills and tears in my eyes when I think about how much fun and how generous and kind and enjoyable and supportive Dr. Gaby was. And I shadowed him in his office. And several things happened there. And one of the subjects was, because he was brilliant in many, many things. And one of the things was thyroid. And he said, after we had seen one patient, this patient is on desiccated thyroid. He said, you want to do some good when you go back home to Santa Fe? That's where I was at the time. He said, take your patients who are on Synthroid, take them off of Synthroid and put them on desiccated thyroid, like used to happen in the old days. A lot of them are going to feel better, and they're going to be grateful you did. And sure enough, that's what I did. I went back, and if a patient of mine or a new patient was on Synthroid, levothyroxine, pure bioidentical T4, I would switch them to desiccated thyroid. And sure enough, just like Dr. Gaby knew, some of these patients really like desiccated thyroid a lot better than they did their Synthroid.
Interesting.
And there's no doubt that the reason was when you desiccate a pig's thyroid, you not only get the T4, which is in the thyroid, you get the T3. So I'm taking you back to Synthroid, just like the T4 that comes out of our thyroid gland. In most cases, and most people, is going to get converted to T3, which is the active form, but not everyone does that conversion terrifically. I've heard estimates that 10% of the American population doesn't do that conversion well. So there I had done it. I had dutifully switched my patients over to desiccated thyroid. I did notice that their TSH levels were lower and that their T3 levels, free T3 levels, were a little higher. And sure enough, the pig doesn't have the same balance of T4 to T3. The pig has a little more T3 than the human being does. I know these are a lot of details. Here we are again, Carolyn, down in the weeds. Simple question, more to it than meets the eye.
It's fascinating.
Well, along comes, I don't know what year it was close to 2000. And there's an outbreak of something called mad cow disease. And people were getting something called Jakob Creutzfeldt. It was life-ending. When a human being gets mad cow disease, most of the time they lose their life. And it came from the cows who were ill. And where it really get driven home, and this is what happens when you're a medical doctor seeing patients, sooner or later you bump into the thing that's being advertised or is popular. And I had a patient sitting in front of me telling me a relative of hers in his 50s who lived in Great Britain and really loved his meat rare, loved his steak rare, just passed away from Jakob Creutzfeldt or mad cow disease. And when you're sitting there and you're a human being having an experience like that, like I was going, wow, that's really something. And we knew it was transmitted from sick cows, really.
Yeah.
And so I asked myself the question, God, I've been prescribing a lot of pig. And lo and behold, my unique experience in my early days, I did a lot of work in emergency rooms to support my holistic habit. I called it. And one of the remote emergency rooms that I did was in a place called Clayton, New Mexico. God bless Clayton. Let's a shout out for Clayton. And they were right in the middle of the cow factory farms. And in fact, the stench from the manure was so strong, I couldn't open my hospital windows because I was surrounded by these factory farms, as they've been known. And it was pretty appalling, really. These cows were confined. Their manure piles were enormous. They'd stand up on the manure piles. They were desolate. They were overpacked. And these cows are well known to not be so healthy and to need antibiotics, for example. And I'm thinking, wow, this is impactful. And are the American pigs that the Armor Company is, quote, harvesting thyroid glands from, are they safe? And I went and asked a compounding pharmacy friend of mine, what do you think about that? What do you think of desiccated thyroid? He says, well, it's safe. There's no mad pig disease. And I thought, well, case of one. I mean, I know how these pigs are.
Right.
And then the clincher for me is I opened up the bottle of desiccated thyroid.
Uh-oh.
And if anyone who's done that, at least in the days when I opened it, there's an extremely strong odor that reminded of my glory days in Clayton, New Mexico. It smelled like a barnyard. And I thought, okay, I'm done with this. I don't want to be the first physician on the planet that is seeing patients and giving them desiccated thyroid. And somewhere on the planet, we learn that there is a mad pig disease, and it's being passed in these desiccated thyroid glands. So I switched all my patients back, most of them. Some of them didn't want to switch, but I switched most of them to a combination of levothyroxine, pure T4, and many of them did quite well with that. And for those who also needed the T3, I do a compounded long-acting liothyronine, otherwise known as T3 T3, and eventually we determine the proper doses of each one of those. Then we combine them into one compounded capsule. And so these days, what I recommend is that if a person needs thyroid hormone, which is so common, that you start them on levothyroxine, 50 micrograms of the white tablet, and you have them keep on increasing their dose because those white tablets are scored. That means you can get half a tablet quite easy. So you do 50, then you do 75, then you do 100. I never prescribe these colored doses. I don't want the dyes in there. 50, 75, 100, 125. If a patient feels good and doesn't get a rapid heartbeat or palpitations, meaning they had too much, they feel better, we then test them to confirm that they're in good shape. And if they are, we keep them on levothyroxine. White, always 50 microgram levothyroxine. It's not expensive. If they're not quite responding the way that I would like them to, or their thyroid test results do not show sufficient T3, otherwise they're one of those Wilson syndromes who don't convert T4 to T3 as well, I'll add long-acting liothyronine.
Would that be known as Wilson's thyroid syndrome?
Well, Wilson was a medical doctor who described the poor conversion and ways to address it. And we'll try and find out by symptom alleviation and titration, what the optimal long-acting T3 dose is. And I say long-acting because T3 has a very short half-life, it's called. Which means it comes in, does its thing, and goes pretty quickly. So, for example, I had a 20-some-year-old woman who she needed T4 plus T3, and she wound up getting the commercial Cytomel, it's called, which is the commercial T3, which is very short-acting, and her thyroid situation was so delicate, as you can imagine, someone who needed T3 and T4 in her 20s, that she wound up taking Cytomel 4 times a day.
Wow.
Why did she need it 4 times a day? Because the Cytomel she took in the morning was wearing off by noon, etc., by 4 o'clock, etc. So she had to take it 4 times a day. So compounding pharmacies know how to make something extended release so it all doesn't plop into the bloodstream right away. And so I have a lot of patients on thyroid treatment. 95% of them are on, 95% of them, I'm just making a wild guess, are on some combination of T4 plus long-acting T3. And I want to correct that. There's a certain small number that they do really well on T4 alone, and they test out really well. So they'll be on T4 alone. But a certain percentage of my patients also need to be on long-acting T3.
Interesting.
So, synthetic, yeah. Not the thyroid that's in that tablet, not the T4, not the levothyroxine that's in that tablet. That is not synthetic in the sense that it is bioidentical. It's molecularly identical to what your thyroid gland puts out. Now, there's fillers and stuff in there. So if you read the patient information sheet and they list everything in there, you're not going to like some of the things in there. There are purer forms of this made where they don't put so much extra stuff in there.
So I guess you're okay with synthetic then.
That's what I have to say. And there's a candy wrapper noise. There's some kind of Shalima, is this occurring when I'm speaking or when both of us are speaking or when Carolyn's speaking? Let us know. Type it into the chat. There's some kind of microphone issue.
Hang on one sec. Let's do this.
So that's what I have to say about Synthroid, Desiccated Thyroid. And you know what? If the only tool I had was Desiccated Thyroid, I'd celebrate it and I'd use it all the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. May I ask you, this is off, I hope that it's that candy wrapper noise is not there. Usually if you go on Chrome, we're not on Chrome today, oddly. That might go away. The thyroid hormone, our sex hormones, are they all synthesized in the same place?
No.
Okay.
Thyroid hormone is synthesized when out of a gland called the thyroid gland, which is right here, right below the Adam's apple. And yeah, that's where the thyroid hormones come out of.
Okay, thank you.
And the other hormones that we're also familiar with, like the ovarian hormones, which would be estrogen, testosterone, DHEA, and progesterone, they're coming out of the ovaries. And then there's the adrenal glands that produce a lot of lovely hormones. Part of the adrenal glands produces adrenaline in a certain part of the adrenal gland. They're sitting on top of the kidneys. And another part of the adrenal gland produces cortisol. Woohoo! This is the one hormone we need to live. If we don't have enough cortisol, we don't live. And it also produces DHA. It also can produce some testosterone, an adrenal gland. So yeah, there's glands. They're the factories. Thyroid, adrenals, and down below, beneath this table that you can't see, is the factory for the production, in my case, of testosterone. And if you look down below, you'll see where your factory is. You'll only be able to see the outside. It's deep in there. It's the ovaries. They're producing your testosterone, progesterone, DHEA, and estrogens for as long as they do produce it, which is not forever, which is why we're on this here Facebook Live, because midlife used to be, there was no menopause on the planet Earth because women didn't live that long and men didn't even live as long as women did, because we've been around for 200,000 years, so there was no menopause. I guess it was too treacherous out there in the streets. And I think there was problems with nutrition and other issues. But anyway, there was no menopause. But now, because of sanitation and nutrition and other factors, some mysterious, we're living a long time, but the mechanism is still the same. We stop producing babies when it's time to become a grandmother or a grandfather.
Yep.
And the ovaries stop producing hormones. And here we are, folks. We've gathered together today because of this honorable transition that seems to keep on taking place.
Because that pituitary gland is just not stopping.
Well, because the ovaries are not producing the hormones.
Better yet, yes.
So here we are. We're replenishing these hormones. Welcome to the ins and outs of menopause
With David Rosensweet, MD. So let me ask you this: is there a danger to being progesterone dominant, as I've been told that I am? The questioner says. We speak often of estrogen dominance, but we don't speak really very often of progesterone dominance.
This is the first time in 25 years of treating women in menopause that I have heard this term, progesterone dominance.
Yep.
Now, I know in young women that hormonal balance differs woman to woman. In fact, in our book, Happy Healthy Hormones, which you can download a PDF copy of for free, off the ins and outs of menopause, I think I have an illustration of different types of body types.
Mm-hmm.
Because women vary as to how much of each one of these ovarian hormones they put out and what the internal balance is. Like there's some women, they really put out a robust amount of estrogen compared to anything else. And estrogen has certain effects. It stimulates breast glandular tissue, so these women tend to be larger of breasts. It facilitates the closure of the long bones, the growth plates. So these women tend to be, it's not universal, shorter of stature. These are estrogen-rich, estrogen-dominant women. In the healthy state, everything's fine with an estrogen-rich woman. If she gets out of balance, she got too much estrogen, she's going to start getting overstimulatory effects, but that's not what we're talking about. But when we talk about estrogen dominance, which is very common, not enough progesterone to balance the robust amount of estrogen, and very often the reason is estrogen works really well in the stress response, it gets recruited, there's an excessive amount of it, and there's not sufficient progesterone to balance it. Estrogen dominance. Estrogen's effects dominate the effects of progesterone and other hormones. Now, some women are not obviously estrogen rich. Estrogen rich women tend to be shorter with lots of curves, shorter of stature, lots of curves, and large breasted. Again, this isn't universal, and very often it's a mixed situation. Hello, we haven't seen Kim for a while. Good to see you, Kim. Absolutely. And then other women, estrogen is not their predominating hormone. Some women, testosterone is.
Right.
All women have all of them. Sometimes women are testosterone rich. They tend to be very muscular. They tend to be athletic. They tend to not be as curvy. And likewise, some women seem to have a robust amount of progesterone. I never heard progesterone dominance. But a lot of women have a lot amount of progesterone. They tend to be taller, smaller breasted, thinner.
Is it dangerous?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, good.
And I don't know how someone could be named progesterone dominant. They could by stature alone, and again, we cover that in the book. But it wouldn't mean that you had the wrong amount of progesterone. You can get an excessive amount of estrogen, or really what happens is you get an increased estrogen output from the stress, and you don't have enough progesterone to balance it, and you get breast tenderness and cramps, and you can wind up with endometriosis. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen from excessive amounts of estrogen. But I'm thinking out loud. I just haven't heard of an excessive amount of progesterone. If you had an excessive amount of progesterone, if you had a really rich amount of progesterone, you tend to be calm of mood.
Yeah.
Like in pregnancy, progesterone levels and estrogen levels are very, 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 very high, much higher than a non-pregnant state. And progesterone is almost astronomical. And so many women have a certain time during pregnancy where they're like the Buddha. They're so calm and centered and peaceful, and it's from these terrifically high progesterone levels. And but I haven't heard of progesterone dominance for any reason. And Rita is telling us that she became, quote, progesterone dominant after taking it in menopause without estrogen. Okay, there you go. There's a reason. Now, all women in menopause need progesterone. Most women in perimenopause, as early as your 30s, could use some progesterone, as it can decline earlier and deeper than estrogen. But I'm not going to call it progesterone dominance. I'm going to call it progesterone overdose. Because the right amount of progesterone feels great. And women love progesterone when they get the dosage right.
Especially pregnant. It's like
especially women in menopause who lose their progesterone. 95% of them, not all of them. There are exceptions. Some women don't tolerate progesterone. But 95% of the women I've ever dealt with, they love progesterone. It makes a difference between sleeping and not sleeping, anxiety and peacefulness. It's such a wonderful hormone. So I'm going to say that, Marita, you're showing us something that just doesn't work. When a woman goes into menopause, progesterone alone is not going to do it. Because progesterone decline is not the only thing that's going on in there. you got estrogen decline. If your periods have stopped, you have major estrogen decline. And even if it's even if you're in your early 30s, many women are already starting to experience estrogen decline.
Yes.
So I never address menopause or the perimenopause with estrogen alone or progesterone alone. In this case, progesterone alone. And very quickly we get into testosterone, which you need as much as you need air. Well, not exactly. I think we need air a little more than we need testosterone.
I have them both.
But over time, you need all these ovarian hormones. They all are so strong and they all matter. So here's the moral of the story. It always comes down to the exact same thing. As a woman in your 30s or 40s, you have a job to do. You know, it's too bad you've got this job to do, but you've got it because it's only 2021, rather primitive times still in the history of humanity. These are still, like, one could call them the early stages to be kind, or certainly the primitive stages to be kind. And in these primitive times, when you go into hormone depletion states in perimenopause and menopause, you need something. You need hormone replenishing. And when you need hormone replenishing, you need someone to write the prescriptions because these are prescription items. And so your job becomes finding that prescriber, that healthcare professional that has the following criteria. You like them. You trust them. You can communicate with them. And they've got special education and training and best case mentoring because they've had special interest in hormones and treating women in menopause. So your job becomes a singular job. It's go find that person. And why I say it can be a little bit challenging because they're not as prevalent as one would hope. The really good ones, the ones who know what they're doing. We've been on this Facebook Live for quite a while these last couple of years, and there's been hundreds and hundreds of questions. Why are all those questions out there? Because you can't easily go into your local hormone prescriber and get it right. So you're left with a lot of questions in many instances. The moral of the story there is your job is go shopping. Go reach out to all your friends, ask them which particular healthcare professional are you using for women's issues. Do you know anyone who's good with menopause and hormones? If your friend circle won't do it, you all know how to go shopping for other things. You may have to have an educational learning curve to go find the right person, but your job, and it may take you 1 or 2 or 3 different providers, or join the menopause method. And if we're in your state, we can help you with some real expertise here. But your job is the same. Go shopping until you find a provider that you like, you trust, and they know what they're doing. Because there's so many moving parts, to get it right in a way that you're going to go, wow, this is fantastic. I love this stuff. And yeah, there's still little bumps in the road. This didn't solve my whole life for me. But replenishing these hormones is fabulous. And so that's what you want to wind up with. And then you want to stay on these hormones for your whole life. Just like men. When men lose their testosterone, do you think at the age of 60 they feel like stopping their testosterone? No way. They often feel like increasing their testosterone, but they do not feel like stopping it. Because any man who's been testosterone deficient and has experienced what it's like to get testosterone replenished, they're a lifetimer. I'm saying because there's misinformation out there for women. The misinformation was you should take the smallest dose for the shortest period of time. That was totally invented. It wasn't based on any studies, any medical rationale. It was based on fear because of the false Women's Health Initiative in 2002. So, gee whiz, you don't think I wandered off? Do you think I remember what the original question was here, Carolyn? No.
I don't remember it either, and I have it written down. I could just listen to you for hours and hours and hours. I don't even care. But I know that women do care, and that is exactly why we're here. I have two pretty heady questions, and we have 15 minutes. So this is one that I have not. Anyway, I'm going to present it. Questioner says, I have been told that I have mural nodules in both ovaries, and my doctor made mention of possible ovarian cancer, but he said, either or, maybe yeah, maybe no. He's not too concerned. She is considering having a full hysterectomy, and she's concerned, but really concerned about the loss of her hormones. So she's wondering, do you feel that these mural nodules on her ovaries came due to the fact that she was taking hormones, or could it possibly be a fact that she was not taking hormones?
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I'd like to say is, LaShawn, we have someone in the Dallas area. I see you found someone really good, and that's great, but you can't see her till February. We have someone in the Dallas area that it's not, they're not part of the menopause method, but they do have organic oils, and that's possible. But there's an expert there, and it's a compounding pharmacist, and I'm going to give you the name. Las Colinas Pharmacy. The chief pharmacist there is great at this. He's been prescribing to women since the early 80s, and we've had him on the show before. So I'm not going to mention his name.
He's amazing.
But I
and
will
the two of you
mention
together
that,
are great.
there's someone in your area, in the DFW area, and I can highly recommend him.
We have an interview with him, actually. If you go back, I can try and find it and repost it. It's great. So I don't know if you want to answer that question or not that I brought up.
There's some missing information here. And what exactly are these mural nodules? Now, because the ovary is bumpy, lumpy and bumpy when you look at a surface, and even the ovarian follicles, out of which an egg pops once a month under healthy circumstances, these follicles can be filled with water or blood or something. When they don't totally pop, they can turn into ovarian cysts. So if you have an ovary that has cysts on it, that's going to be a lumpy. So it's the mural nodules. That can be mural. Mural means surface, and nodules can be like bumps.
Yeah.
But I don't know how specific someone is in describing that, because if this was discovered on transvaginal ultrasound, it was.
Yeah.
There would be a point at which a gynecologist would be concerned and would want to know, are these tumors or are they common cysts? And they'd want to do something called laparoscopy. I can't say it's the most fun anyone ever does. You get to go under anesthetic and you get a small slit made near your belly button, and the gynecologist puts a tube in there, and then go in and visualize those ovaries and say, oh yeah, these are just cysts, or these are just benign mural nodules. They can even do a biopsy on them. And so if a gynecologist is concerned, they're going to take the next step. And so I'm not sure how to answer your question, because I'm going to have to make an assumption that how these were diagnosed in transvaginal ultrasound, that there wasn't that concern. The next issue becomes, are hormones going to hurt you?
Yeah.
Now, I have not seen evidence of hormones hurting. This morning, I was communicating with a world expert back and forth on breast cancer. And Dr. Berkson had, in her constant quest to really get down to the details and find out what's going on here, she had sent me an article saying, are these estrogen receptor sites stimulating breast cancer or not? Because it's been a question that has not been answered. Does someone have an estrogen receptor site cancer? Does treating that woman with estrogen stimulate the cancer? Well, you'd think, well, wouldn't common sense say, well, if you've got an estrogen receptor site positive cancer, 70% of them are, breast cancers are estrogen receptor site positive. If you gave a woman estrogen who had that, wouldn't that stimulate the cancer? You'd think the answer would be yes, but the answer is unclear. We don't know the answer to that. And in private conversations with a world expert on this, it's his belief that that's not the problem in the cancers. The problem is the cancer.
Yeah.
And they're out of control. And if you read the book Estrogen Matters, for those of you who have real scientific interest in this, you're going to surmise from that book that women who have had breast cancer, had that breast cancer properly treated, that's a process.
Yeah.
They're at an increased risk of recurrence of that breast cancer as opposed to the rate of developing breast cancer in a woman who's never had breast cancer. Women have an increased rate of recurrence there. However, if that woman is treated with hormones, the woman with breast cancer who's had the breast cancer properly treated, if you treat her with hormones, she's at less risk of recurrence than if she's not treated with hormones. And so, and one of the authors of that book had a study going treating women who've had breast cancer with hormones. And so it's a fascinating topic, and the evidence is not in. And this is what I wrote to one of my colleagues there this morning. I said, in full awareness that an illness so strong as cancer has a multitude of causes, some understandable and identifiable, some mysterious, an illness so strong as to put us in jeopardy of being alive on Earth anymore, it has thousands of causes, sometimes 100 of them really prominent, and sometimes 5 of them that make perfect sense. So, like I like to say to my patients, and I've said this before, that anytime a patient has a diagnosis and they want to know what caused it, especially something like cancer, I'll point to my wall.
Right.
And I'll say, let's pretend that I could show you a video of your whole life. There was a videographer that started filming you when you were conceived in the uterus and filmed you 24/7 your whole life right up to today, and had a magic editing button. And when they pressed that button of all that footage, be a lot of footage there, it edited out all the good stuff, all the fun, all the love, all the good food you ate, all the good exercise you did, all the happiness and joy and wonderful things about life. It edited all that out. What would be left behind would be the story of how you got ill. There would be dietary indiscretions, nutritional issues, too much or too little exercise, toxicity,
stress.
We expose to a lot of chemicals in our environment, and they go into our bodies. And then the elephant in the room is a dysfunctional response, an excessive response, a dysfunctional response to the stress of life. The stress of life is a normal part of life. What really matters is the wisdom, the skill at which we respond to that stress. And so, because if you don't respond properly, if you react to that stress, you're going to trigger the same biology that used to run from saber-toothed tigers, if you remember, when you were running.
Right. And over and over.
It's a very poignant moment in anyone's life when they're being chased by a saber-toothed tiger. So somewhere in your central nervous system, you probably have memories of running in some lifetime pretty fast. But at any rate, lest I lose track of where I was.
Well, saber-toothed tigers are absolutely fascinating.
The story of cancer or any illness has got 1,000 causes. And then there's the unexplainable.
Right.
There are many patients that, I can't come up with a reason. It seems mysterious. It seems to transcend my common knowledge about life itself. But life is very, very much bigger and deeper than what the little kernel of it that I understand, which is not a small kernel.
Right, exactly.
So,
exactly.
Moral of the story, what's going on in those ovaries, and what are these mural nodules, and are they responsive to hormones? Because they either are or they aren't. Even breast cancer has been studied so powerfully in this regard, and there's more study to do. We don't even know if estrogen is a problem with an estrogen receptor site positive cancer. Come on now. And there's, as far as I know, it's not the estrogen that's giving the ovaries trouble. Now, maybe someone wants to challenge me on that. But here's the bottom line. You can go to your doctor and say, were you concerned about my ovaries? If so, how about let's take the next step? Or if you're not concerned, could you show me where where hormones would be a problem? Because I'm having a rough time navigating on this planet without my female hormones.
Oh, it's rough, all right. And that's why we're all here.
And so you got to take the next steps. And sometimes you might even want a second opinion, someone who's an expert. So here's what I recommend that you do, because I have not done this. You look up mural nodules. I'm looking at a report right here. You look up what relationship do hormones have to ovarian cancer, ovarian cysts, I mean, you can get hormonal imbalances in a young woman, and you can get not enough hormone properness to actually get the egg to pop. And that's a real common form of cyst. But that's cysts. They're benign. They can hurt, but they're benign. They're not cancerous.
Like,
ovarian cancer does occur. I had a friend pass away from ovarian cancer. It happens. But it's not a common cancer as cancers go. And what I recommend to this questioner is go do your due diligence. See how much you can learn about, do hormones actually affect mural nodules as they relate to the ovary? You can get the answer to that. And sometimes you got to do this. You think, well, this is not my responsibility. I want to go to an expert. Well, where's the world's expert on mural nodules of the ovary? Well, I'll tell you, a lot of gynecologists really know what to do. They know exactly what to do. When they're looking at a transvaginal ultrasound and they don't like the looks of it, they're going to say, let's take the next step. And they do so gladly, because that's what they're surgeons, basically. They like to do procedures, and they know how to do them, and they know how to do them safely. So you've got some more due diligence, because the consequence of not taking hormones, because you got some kind of thing that was seen on transvaginal ultrasound and an ovary, that's very consequential. I would not stop. Keep that drum beating until you know the answer, because that answer is findable. And gynecologists know how to do it.
And God bless them for that.
Yes,
absolutely. And God bless the doctors that really like to take menopause on as a specialty.
Yes, bless them.
Bless them. So, it's been kind of a funky interview here. I don't want to lead out with this question. It's just too long. Maybe you can let us know this one, though. Questioner says, I know that vitamin D is a hormone, and I'm wondering if it's an important hormone to be taking along with my other hormones. Does it help to potentiate the effects of my estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and DHEA?
Well, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Next question. No.
Well, how much time you got?
Vitamin D is a hormone. I know I've heard it called that. I've heard it called the pro-hormone. And, you know, technically, it's what I remember of the definition of hormone is it's put out one place and it operates in lots of different places. But we don't want to get caught in semantics here. This is very important. I don't hold vitamin D to be a hormone like traditional hormones are, like cortisol, my God, or thyroid hormone, or the pituitary hormones, or the ovarian hormones, estrogen, progesterone. I don't hold vitamin D personally to be in the same category. Having said that, boy, vitamin D in the course of my career has risen up as one of the most important topics that I have encountered, and there's been a lot said about it. And here's the best information. Be sure your vitamin D levels are good, and you're not going to be able to feel them. You're going to have to get a blood test, 25 hydroxy vitamin D. And you want them between 60 and 100. And you don't want them really less than 60. And vitamin D has so many functions in the body. Well, so many things do. I mean, you cannot be a human being that's not getting B vitamins. You won't stay on the earth, or you don't get enough vitamin C, you get scurvy.
Yes.
And vitamin D is right up there. And especially in this day and age, I mean, of the many things that can support the immune system, is the immune system important in 2021? I think so. I'm just kidding. The immune system is super important.
Like uber, super, super important.
So you want to be doing the things that the immune system likes. And it likes vitamin D, and it doesn't like vitamin D deficiencies. And a lot of people on this planet do not have adequate vitamin D.
That is very correct.
So I take vitamin D every day. Some people, and it really ultimately needs to be tested. A lot of people need 5,000 international units a day. I'm saying that because the standard RDA, to me, is not sufficient to get the job done. God bless the RDA that it definitely lists the minimals, but that's not something I'm going to rest in. I take between 5,000 and 10,000 a day, but I'm a pretty big guy, close to 200 pounds.
Wow.
And so I have a lot of my women patients on 5,000. I've got some on 7,000. I've got some on 2,000. Why the variation? Depends how well you digest it and absorb it and how much you need. And meanwhile, you want to test between 60 and 100. And it's important enough, vitamin D, that I like to do the testing on patients. And I like to see, throughout human history, even back in the primitive times when we were on the planet with saber-toothed tigers, I still wanted my vitamin D level to be up when we were hanging out with the various critters out there.
Well, you had the sunshine, though, right? I mean, doesn't that help somewhat?
Yeah, it sure does. You can convert to vitamin D right in your skin with adequate sunshine. Now, I wasn't measuring my vitamin D levels as far as I could recollect back when there were saber-toothed tigers around the corner. So the best I had going for me was sunshine and a lot of it. And since we didn't have houses,
you were getting that sun.
a lot of sun.
Right through that hut.
But back to the point, vitamin D is very, very important, as lots of things are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
I take a handful of supplements every day, vitamins and minerals. And I recommend everyone else do too, and high quality stuff. And vitamin D, you want to get the right dose in there for you, vitamin D. So That's what I have to say about vitamin D.
Well, you
So,
said a lot of good about vitamin D, that's for sure.
yeah.
And you said a lot of really good stuff today, too, Dr. Rosensweet, and it's always appreciated. You're so amazing. And we all really enjoy you and everything that you help us with so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Oh, you're welcome. I don't know. I hope you have a fabulous weekend.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hope all the women have a fabulous weekend.
Yeah.
And, we're going to do this again on Tuesday and back to the ballet backdrop somehow. I'm not sure how, but we'll get there. Not a problem. So to everybody, much love. Enjoy. Thank you, Dr. Rosensweet,
Thank
so
you, Carolyn.
much. Always, always a
Bye,
pleasure.
everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you later.